Hello everyone and welcome to GLB Productions. My name's Bruno Luce. Thanks for joining me. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at this lovely little parlor-sized guitar from Takamine, the CP3NYK. So to begin with, what's in a name? Well, in the case of Takamine, quite a lot. Takamine is very well known for very alphanumeric and quite cryptic names to their guitars, and you have to understand their numbering system in order to understand what you're buying. And in the case of this guitar, it's really quite important because at present time, March 2017, there are 3 guitars that look very much like this in the Takamine lineup, and I thought that we just clear them up to begin with. So, first of all, you have the P3NY. That is a New Yorker size body, same size body as this. It has a solid cedar top and a solid sapele back with sapele sides. It has a 14th fret neck joint, slot headstock, 42.5mm or 1 11/16 nut, and it's equipped with the CT4B2 preamp. That is not this guitar. There is another guitar that is called the CP4NYK. Now this guitar has a solid cedar top, solid koa back with koa laminate sides, 12th fret neck joint, slot headstock, 42.5mm or 1 11/16 nut, and the CTP3 or cool tube preamp. Once again, that is not this guitar. This guitar, the CP3NYK, has solid cedar top, solid koa back. I'll just show you that. Beautiful book matching on this one. Solid koa back with koa laminate sides, 12 fret neck joint, a solid headstock, a 45mm or 1 3/4" nut, and it's equipped with the CT4B2 preamp. All 3 of the guitars have the standard Takamine palathetic pickup system. All 3 are made in Japan. Now, for me personally, this guitar has the most desirable set of features of all 3 of these guitars. I find that the 45mm 1 3/4" nut is a very good nut width for all around playing. I do probably about 50-50 fingerstyle and strumming, and I really like this nut for both of those styles. I also come from a classical background. A typical classical nut is around 52mm, so I'm used to the wider nut. I have no problem with that. The headstock, would be nice to have a slot headstock, but you know, it's not a big deal to me. Personally, I don't mind the aesthetic of either guitar. And finally, koa. I much prefer koa to sapele. If sapele is analogous to mahogany, then koa has often been called hi-fi mahogany. The idea that with mahogany you have a very pronounced mid-range with a little bit less bass and a little bit less treble. With koa you still get that mid-range, but you get a bit more sparkle on the treble side, as we'll hear very shortly. Alright, so let's get into the features and dimensions of this guitar. So to begin with, this is a New Yorker or parlor-sized guitar. It's the smallest body shape that Takamine make, yet as you'll see it has a surprisingly big voice. Scale length of this guitar is either 630 or 640mm depending on how you measure it. As with most of the Pro Series models, it has a split saddle, so it's a little bit difficult to measure the scale length. Depending on where you measure it, you get either 63 or 64 cm. So this is a full 10mm less than the typical scale length, which is 65 cm or 650mm. And this affects the string tension as well as the way the guitar feels, as you'll see shortly. The lower bout, this part here, is 36 centimeters or about 14 inches across, and the body depth is 10.6 cm or slightly over 4 inches. So very small body and a relatively shallow body makes for a guitar that's very comfortable to play. We've already mentioned the fact that it has a solid cedar top, solid koa back with koa laminate sides. It has a rosewood fingerboard and a rosewood bridge. When the guitar comes from the factory, these are quite a lot lighter, and what I've done is I've put a little bit of lemon oil on them, which is why you get this nice dark color. I suggest that you do that as well on any guitar that has rosewood components on it. The inlay in the fingerboard is what I call the small circle maple. So what it is, it's a little ring of maple with rosewood in the middle. Very minimalist, but at the same time very tasteful. It's also worth noting that there is no marker on the 3rd fret on the front of the fingerboard, although there are white dot markers on the side in the normal location. The bridge is pinless, as you can see here. There are no bridge pins. Instead, the string threads through the back of the bridge and is held in position by its ball end there. The tuners are Gotos, Japanese made, and they have these amber plastic buttons. In my experience, the ones with these plastic buttons are not quite as good as the metal ones. On this particular guitar, the B tuner had a considerable amount of slot in it. So you turn maybe a couple of mm before the tuner would actually start to engage, and I can only put that down to some slop in the actual button. It's not a big issue, and the guitar in general has excellent tuning stability, so not a problem there. These Gotos are compatible with the other Goto models that Takamine use, so if you want to swap over with those with metal buttons, it's fairly straightforward to do. While we're on the headstock, there is a rosewood headstock cap overlay laminate, and as you can see here, you have the logo Takamine in gold foil. Very nice. The guitar has white Ivoroid binding, and it has a dark wood Ivoroid purfling as well as a what looks to be an Ivoroid rosewood rosette. So overall, this guitar, the aesthetics are in keeping with the Pro 3 series, and are generally quite austere, quite workmanship-like, which I like personally. Alright, now let's discuss the acoustic sound of the guitar. Our setup for this is an Audio-Technica AE3000 side address large diaphragm condenser microphone. We're aimed sort of at the 12th fret with the mic pointed slightly towards the body. The microphone is run directly into the video camera. There is no EQ and no compression on it at all. So with that sort of mic positioning, you get this kind of sound. So one of the things that you will hear is that this guitar has a very quick, almost explosive response to the sound. I think that's partly due to the koa and partly due to the fact that it has quite a small top or soundboard to be excited. The sound really seems to jump out of the guitar. Listen again. And I love that quick response. I always call these parlour guitars shouty little guitars. They're like little dogs that bark a lot in a good way. And that's something that you tend not to get from the bigger body sizes, just because there's more mass there, there's more air to move, and there's a bigger soundboard to get going. In terms of the wood combination, cedar is well known as being very good for fingerstyle. It has a natural compression, so the guitar is very easy to get going, so to speak, and at the same time it limits the dynamics in a way that's good for fingerstyle players. So I'll play you a bit of fingerstyle. So as you can hear there, it's easy to get a nice loud fingerstyle without having to beat yourself to death to get it. That's one of the reasons why cedar is preferred by a lot of classical guitar players. Now, let's talk about the koa. The koa, as you can hear there, it has plenty of mid-range. It also has a top-end shimmer that you don't get from a mahogany guitar, and that's, I think, why they call koa hi-fi mahogany, because it has that extra top end, which I personally really like. This is especially obvious when strumming. As you could hear there with the open chords, that top end shimmer is really wonderful because it helps to separate the top end strings from the bottom end string. As would be expected from a guitar this size, you don't have a lot of bass. There just isn't the size really to give it. That is, of course, acoustically. When we plug in, it's a slightly different story. More on that later. Now, one more thing that we have to discuss is the scale length, along with the fact that it is a 12th fret neck joint. Majority of acoustic guitars join the neck to the body at the 14th fret. With the 12th fret neck joint, you move the bridge down into the center of the lower bout. And many people feel that this makes for a guitar that sounds quite different to its 14th fret cousins. The shorter scale length on this guitar also means that the strings have slightly less tension than they would on a 65 cm guitar. So what that means is that you can get away with a slightly higher action in order to avoid the strings bottoming out during hard strumming. So I'll just demonstrate that for you here. So even with me hammering away on the guitar, no bottoming out of the strings. So this guitar is a surprisingly good guitar for that style of playing. Obviously the fact that it's not a cutaway will limit your access to the upper frets, and the fact that it's a 12th fret will limit that even further. So that's something to consider if you do a lot of complex stuff up here. There are 20 frets total, but as you can see, I have fairly big hands and I can't really reach the last fret. I would need to come around here in order to do that. So something to bear in mind if you're considering this particular guitar. Now let's discuss the plugged-in sound of the guitar. As with most Takamines, it comes from the factory with the Takamine Palathetic pickup system, which consists of 6 individual piezo elements, one for each string, and this particular guitar is equipped with the CT4B2 solid-state preamp. Like all Japanese-made Takamines, it has the sound choice docking port, which means that you can swap preamps to whatever you want. You can swap it for the CT4DX or the CTP3 or 2 cool tube preamps. If you're interested in knowing about these preamps, I have videos on each of them on my channel. Quick plug there. So, our setup for this part of the video is the guitar is run into a Radial JDI passive direct box, and from there into the video camera. Once again, automatic gain control is turned off, and the EQ on the guitar is set flat, volume wide open. With that, you get this kind of sound. So as you can hear, the plugged-in sound is absolutely enormous. I'm always amazed at how big these small guitars sound when you plug them in. A large part of that is due to the Takamine electronics, and if you notice, the other part of it is due to the fact that these smaller guitars, they produce a sound that emphasizes the fundamental and has less in the way of harmonics. So I think that that in part contributes to that really big sound that you get. The CT4B2 preamp is probably my favorite next to the line driver. I like the fact that it's very simple, and I also like the fact that the controls only give you plus minus 5 dB. It's very hard to mess up your sound with this preamp. I also like the ready access to the battery, the tuner, and also the fact that the tuner indicator goes up and down as opposed to left and right as on the other Japanese-made preamps. On this guitar, I feel very little need to adjust the EQ at all. I usually leave it completely flat. Sometimes I'll cut the mid just slightly. Let's do that. I've cut the mid by 3 dB. Now you get this kind of sound. So as you can hear, that gives a very, very natural sound that's very close to the acoustic sound of the guitar. The bass, the bass. Now the bass is very punchy and it's very fat without being boomy. If you want, you can boost the bass just a little bit. I've pushed it by 2 dB, then you get this kind of sound. So there's absolutely no problem getting a lot of bass with this guitar, but at the same time you won't have that huge woofy pillowy bass that tends to make the sound engineer angry, get in the way of the bass player and feedback on stage. So this acoustic is actually not a bad choice at all for a live guitar if you can get over the fact that it's a little bit small. Finally, let me give you the Brad Davis EQ. Now Brad Davis, the way that he EQs with this preamp is he boosts the bass all the way, he cuts the mid-range all the way, and then he pushes the treble slightly. That gives you this kind of sound. So in conclusion, that's my review of the Takamine CP3NYK parlour guitar. As you heard, this is a guitar with a very, very big voice for its size, but because it has this nice compact body, it's a wonderful couch guitar, parlour guitar, living room guitar, all-purpose, hanging around, singer-songwriter type of guitar. At the same time, because of its size, this guitar is relatively light in weight, and the case is significantly smaller than the case, say, for a dreadnought or a jumbo. So if you're the sort of musician who doubles on several guitars, or if you're an electric player who occasionally doubles on acoustic, this is definitely a guitar to consider. The other interesting thing, of course, is that it just looks different too, right? Something for the player who maybe wants to play acoustic guitar but doesn't like being seen with a dreadnought just like everyone else. The core, back and sides produce a wonderful tone, and the 45mm nut is a bonus for me personally. So that's my review. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. I love to hear from my viewers and I love to communicate with them. This is Bruno Luce for GLB Productions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.